Telling it at a slant. Tales from the heart and other places. Not so blind. He arrived by car, the blind piano tuner, and tapped his way to our front door, while his stone-deaf wife waited in the driving seat. Sight and sound they made a grand duet, but he didn't need her eyes to render discord into concord on my father's Bechstein. Peeping through the half-closed door, I saw him play a note and disappear behind the shiny propped-up lid, plucking at a wire until the jagged sound grew round, fading then to a soft caress. In sight again, he'd feel his way back to the stool, stabbing at a key or playing a chord until he found another noise his ear could not tolerate. He took so long, tweaking, twanging, thumping, banging, and the repeated notes up and down the scale were annoying to the ear. Then suddenly came harmonies so sweet that I closed my eyes, mesmerized, as he conjured colour out of black and white. I was perfectly in pitch with my incited, sightless friend, and knew he saw another standing there. "That's the sound of music, boy," he said, towards the door. "Now fetch your dad to me." Sleeper. Across the carriage from me she lay asleep. Her peculiar beauty came from the hint of a puckered mouth, testament to the soft approach of middle age. In my thoughts I leaned across and kissed those lips, and felt her stir her hips. Yes, that's what I missed at nights, not just the passion, it's that tenderness, that soft and yielding comfort that awakens another hunger just as strong. Then I caught her glance. Lips slightly parted, she looked at me. "Your money and your life," she seemed to say, challenging, for there was much on offer. And now I laid it on the line. Soon my luck will change. Si vis suppeditat, begging now. There's just a chance. It was then that she turned to regard me at a distance, safely round the world's circumference. My dreams had fled, hers not even started. You're never alone with a spider. I call her Ida, my six-legged spider. You see, I checked her out in my arachnid book, and know she's of the fairer sex. But how she lost two shapely legs, she cannot tell. With four one side and two the other, she cuts a dashing curve across the floor, and ends up near her starting point, where she waits a while to regain strength for yet another Paralympic scurry. Thinking it's the bathroom that she wants, and a sip of water from the tub, I place a saucer within 6 paces of her reluctant insect form, and wait. 2 hours later she's still standing there, and the saucer's dry. Did she take a lick while I wasn't looking? Or did the water just evaporate? Like with the missing legs, I'll never know for sure, but this is what I think. One giant step it took to pin my spider to the floor, but she gamely struggled free, losing 2 limbs above the hairy knee. Little wonder, then, that she's reluctant to court more danger from this human stranger. Each day I find her in the room, I count my blessings, and hers too, and yearn to see her grow another pair. But she's no regenerating worm, and, besides, I wouldn't know her then. So I speak to her, and hope that little by little my Ida will learn a spider trust of me. My voice, her silence, what a perfect combination. Denial. I wanted to remember her alive, not dead, but the coroner insisted. "You must identify her," he said. But it wasn't her I saw so still behind the curtain, not my mum, my daddy's darling Rosie, who hugged me each night I went to bed. "Not her," I said, nodding my head. Swipsy Cakewalk. When you rang, I was washing my trombone. In seventh position and slide right out, it just fits the bath. Suds in the bell, then rinse with gel, rub down and dry, then polish it well. Time for a tune? What will it be? Careless Love, played in C? What's that you say? Either me or my trombone. Let's see. OK, you go. I'll blow. So now I'm nobody's sweetheart. I always thought our love is here to stay. All right, I promise. There'll be some changes made. I see. You want all of me. Must I really play bye-bye blues? You used to love Swipsy Cake Walk. And what about 1 o'clock jump? OK, I know. I'm just a big butter and egg man. You know what? You're just a hard-hearted Hannah. Why don't you come on and stomp, stomp, stomp? Surely our love is here to stay. Must I sit right down and write myself a letter? Am I just a stranger on the shore? You say you've had too much of blues my naughty sweetie gives to me, but surely that's the glory of love. Now I don't get around much any more. Ode to an Old Rose. All dead roses should be dyed. What do you think now? What will you think then? Just look. Perplexed petals drooling off the stem. Gone is the corolla of concupiscence, once pinkly deliquescent, now darkly dehydrated, shuddering at the caress of rain. But if you try to represent this indignity of fading life, you find in each charred line and deeply darkened shade a noble belligerence which shimmers with a sense of what has gone before. So look down the stem and see again another rose, still closed on beauty yet to come. Magic moments. The dove was always there, perched above the shuttered shop, where one word of its former name could still be seen. In shimmering print it said, Magic. And so, with that in mind, I take you back to the days when every childhood dream was dispensed from that emporium by a joyful, happy couple whose names we never knew. How, after being released from school, we boys and girls headed for the store which promised more than all our hopes could buy, magic and laughter, for that is what they called their shop. And all our pocket money was well spent on tricks and jokes they sold to us, and pressed into our grateful hands when we'd not enough to pay. We dubbed the wise and kindly purveyor of tricks and pranks our abracadabra man, and saw his pretty wife as his assistant in some long-gone glitzy life of rabbits and hats and disappearing acts. If I arrived alone to browse about their shop, Mr. A would demonstrate his latest conjuring trick to me, and his wife applaud when I'd rehearsed until perfection. And all the while the white dove would be there, clinging to the rim of a black top hat. Then one day I called by to find the shop all boarded up. Abracadabra man had passed on, the people said, and Mrs. A had moved away. But the white dove lingered there, messenger of magic, making our crumbs all disappear. Summus sum. At school I topped the Latin class and charged the other boys and girls a bar of chocolate to do their homework, until the teacher caught me out and seized my hoard of fruit and nut. For punishment he locked me in his cupboard, to cure me of my vanity. Who makes himself too fine breaks himself in fine, he said to me. Now write that out 100 times in medieval Italian. Reading right. Looking back with mellowed eye, I see the deeds of shame and gain which moulded me, and now in books I find the pride that others had in lives that built our history. and wonder at the smallness of my own offence. Woman in the street, I see you pass me by, and how you scowl when I try to smile in your direction. Each time we meet, my heart turns topsy-turvy, and no pill can cure its somersaulting beat. I tried once to ignore you, but could still see you hard-looking in my mind. Now I see you all the time, and dream that you smile at my chagrin as I pick up courage to greet you in the street. I followed once, because, by chance, my business took me in the same direction, and then I felt, in knowing where you went, like a guilty stalker. So now I never go to that part of town, now curfewed by imagined love. So cool. In jazz you hear the colour, see the sound, hunger for the next blue note. End of things to come. Sprinkled from afar by your confetti thoughts, I dreamed of happiness, enjoined, entwined. We breathed as one, sated by the clamours of the night, for passions are the end of things to come. Now, in waking dreams I wait for you, the laughter and the whoopsie-doo, and times when we are one, for passions are the end of things to come. And when we are together we may shout and rant a little, an amalgam of emotions shared, but let's not resist the current of our love, for passions are the end of things to come. That ring I found, with snakes entwined, I bought with you in mind, so please, my love, don't say no, for passions are the end of things to come. But now you've checked the balance of our uneven love, you run from me without a word, for passions are the end of things to come. So I burn what's left of us, then scrabble in the flames to rescue the last picture posed, blackened legs still touching on a mountainside, the climb too steep for you, for passions were the end of things to come. Dear brother, we fought a lot, I the cowboy, you the Indian who always lost, and our tough fraternal love had that vibrant spontaneity of the jazz I played the day you died. But the tears just wouldn't stop. Together. Being with you is such ecstasy. All tenses have become the one, passions pulling silken threads of past, present, and of future into a triptych of ourselves. My operatic love. After you departed from my life with such finality, the embers of my love for you took many months to cool, and in that time my dreams at night sought to rekindle glowing hope with bellows blasts of operatic impossibility. One such dream wakened me into burst of song as I joined in the first act finale. In synopsis it went like this. We'd been sailing, you and I, in our yacht of love along the eastern shores of Africa, and if my geographic recollection be true, had entered some great estuary leading to the darkest heart of that chaotic continent. You and I had gone ashore, and you had trod a different path. Out of sight I called your name, but no one came, so I tracked back to our sailing boat to wait for your return, but found it was nowhere to be seen. That was when I woke up singing, "My ship has gone, my ship has gone," with a chorus in response informing me, "The pirates took it, the pirates took it." The conduct of the second act took a more convoluted path, as I fell back into sleep and went in search of you, and found that you'd become the pirates' mole, clinging to their king as if you were his queen. Naturally, I kill him in a brave fight for my ship and the one I love, And as I do, you swoon across his body with an aria of despair, shunning me with your piratic tears. And so die the embers of my love for you in operatic confusion and a very minor key. Seen but not heard. Rather I would write my tale on running water than tell it you who are so loath to listen. Blank canvas. Having bought the paints, an easel and a canvas, the next step was to begin. But what a step to take! The palette gleamed with beads of colour. Pristine white glared back at me. The empty brush hung in my hand, poised and heavy with destiny. Irresolute it seemed, arrested by some cataleptic veto. The sky, meanwhile, was unquestionably blue, and a pale blue at that. There could be no doubt that the blue mixed with white should be put at the top of the canvas. I didn't need an artist's training to know that I was right. It had to be my starting point, so very gingerly I mixed a little blue on the palette with the smallest bristle brush, and then, with infinite precision, I made a mark, as big as a bean. It was a challenge to the affronted whiteness, and I dared the besmirched canvas to strike back, but so subdued it looked, so lonely my blue bean on canvas. And then I saw in my mind's eye how other artists painted with such relish. So how could I emulate the lunging plunge of Pollock, or slash and parry of other paintbrush swordsmen? No, I'll re-begin with swash and buckle gusto, shouting now, "Take that, you snivelling canvas!" Splash into the turpentine, wallop into the blue and white, frantic flourish on the palette, clean no longer, and then stabs of blue on the cowering surface. The spell was broken. Sickly inhibitions rolled away. I seized the biggest brush and fell upon the easel with a berserk fury. Breathless, I stopped to view the carnival of carnage, to inspect my desecration. But now a new, more subtle force had come upon me. "This won't do," I said. "Change gear, select another mood. More serene. Call it indigo." Picasso would have approved. So I slopped and prodded with a brush, and shapes took form like burnt sienna blushings you may see in the fresh-cut section of a tree. Then my mind began to wander, straying into strange places, like, why do women hug cushions? I tried once and felt a fool, so I placed it behind my head and slept instead. Now the moving, moody brush has fashioned me a smiling face, a woman, I think, my Mona Lisa, who just knows that bilateral symmetry is so boring. Comsoc Comrade. I joined Comsoc at university. I was a fresher, you see, just starting my degree. They said there were a lot of women members, and free love a political necessity. Also, I get to be called comrade, which is cool. So there's this girl called Vanessa, Comrade Vanessa, and all I want is to possess her. After our society meeting at the Bell, and several pints to break the spell, she follows me back to my student cell, my bedsit, for a bit more dialectic, and promptly falls asleep instead. Too much beer and Hegel in her head, mine too, if truth be told, thesis and antithesis, but no synthesis to behold. So what to do? I know. I'll sketch her. A memento on the back of Marx's manifesto. One continuous twirling line, a technique learned in ArtSoc. Pen never lifted until Vanessa is complete. I still have her likeness, decades on, my Comsoc comrade, but not in arms, oh no. Free love, alas, she never towed the party line. Tales from Wales. Hardy Man. Into the house the hardy man came from the field. No word was said as he stumped his mud boots on the slate-slatted floor, while his wife fussed over his tea. No word was said as he tore at the bread with his split-spaded nails, clay-grouted from scrawping potatoes all rain-sodden day. No word was said, not even a sound, as she watched her man eat, her thoughts not of pity or even disgust, but of pride and of dread, for his new job next week was under the ground. No word was said, but she knew that each day she'd pray for her mining man's safe return. Then, as he supped at his tea, their eyes challenged and held in a love that would meld them as one. Don't worry, my dove, I'll always be coming back home to thee. Rowan berries. Tiny clumps of treasure dangling from a thread, just waiting to be picked. But first sift them through your fingers, weigh them in the hand, knead them, count them if you can. A blind man doesn't know their colour, but wills them to be bright, not quite orange, nor yet red. Vermilion, I'd have said. Uncle Idwal's Shed. The notice on the shed door said, "Danger, keep clear," and I knew it was addressed to me. Uncle Idwal was up to something very queer. I'd been inside his brightly painted wooden hut, which matched the yellow gorse below the hillside garden. On secret peeking visits I'd marvelled at his world of mad inventions and hand-built grown-up toys, like his steam-powered engine, heated into puffing piston-pumping jounce by a burning tray of purple methylated spirit from a big brown bottle marked poison, 50 fluid ounce. Or rows of clicking fishing reels and split-cane rods he'd fashioned for our forays to the river bank. There we'd cast the gaudy flies he'd tied himself to fool the trout. And on the bench for all to see, 2-valve radios and crystal sets to tune in to the BBC. Then high above and out of reach, rows of empty cartridges he'd stuff with homemade gunpowder to gee up Guy Fawkes night. Usually I watched my uncle as he tinkered in his shed, and listened to his wild Welsh tales of bats and caves and wizard Merlin's gold. "If you want to tell a story, tell it at a slant," he'd always said. Now, intrigued by Uncle's danger sign, I knocked and listened for his call. "Stay away," he shouted, "and wait behind the rock." Which brings me on to Uncle Idwal's other shed. It was there that he went, to the old outside loo, with a bulging rinso box marked boom. Next he backed towards the rock, trailing cables to my feet. "Now watch," he said, touching terminals to an ever-ready pack. Then came a noise like nothing heard before, a sort of whoomphing crump, and then a clang. The shed at the bottom of the hill, where each member of the family had sometimes sat in blissless freezing necessity, stood smoking, wantonly askew, now bared hypaethral to the sky. Down the hill towards the house a bucket lay where it had fallen from on high, just by Auntie's flapping sheets, hand-washed that day, now streaked and spotted with what looked like clay. "Hell's bells!" exclaimed my uncle as we peered around the rock. "What will I say when she comes home for tea?" Homecoming. Although we never loved, you gave me strength when I was lost, and showed me other ways to live alone once more. I came to you at Croesaw and found a welcome only Wales can give, drawn back by rock and stream and memory of glowing mountain light. Born on Moyligest, I longed to see once more that rugged, sharp profile of dark Canicht, and climb the path of Tryfan, or cross Crib Goch in snow, and row the Menai straight, then feel the wash of rain, knowing that the sun would shine on me again. Trapping fairies. From technicolor dreams I woke to find the cold slate floor beneath my feet as I sleeping walked about my auntie's home. The scene my childish eyes discerned and painted on my mind for decades of immediate recall was of my grown-up cousin fashioning a snare he said would catch him rabbits for the pot. And this gave me an idea beyond my age, when fairies still held me in their thrall. For if a bunny caught the noose around its neck, why not one of the little tykes my auntie said had trampled down her flowers by moonlight? If only I could catch me one, and ask it why it was so small, and if it would grow the size of me, and if a girl, perhaps then I could steal a kiss. And so next day I took my cousin's snare and baited it with birthday cake, and left it out at night in the daisy dingle dell. In the morning I awoke, without doing another walking sleep, and went to check my fairy trap. The cake had gone, but there was a little speck of blood upon the grass. Oh, I was heartbroke, thinking I had hurt the little foogaloo, when I only thought to have a chat. Now, in adult life, I wonder if the tiny folk have put a curse on me. Cooking the books. The boy hovered at the kitchen door, hungry for his tea, wondering what's in store. His mother, unaware, was toiling at the sink. Then, wiping her hands, she moved towards the stove. The boy, me, her son, watched expectantly. She bent, oven-cloth held forth, but instead of pie or bread she drew out 2 books, both red. "They're from the library," she said. "Your granny likes to heat them up." "Why?" I said, with a puzzled shake of head. "To kill the germs that borrowers have left, that's why," she said. Next day, at Sunday lunch, I couldn't eat my meat, not with other people's germs hiding in the roast. Dear Gran, she died, aged 94, 2 oven-ready books still in her shopping bag, and the germs live on. Silver Adder. Coiled fatly on a rock, the adder sucked in strength from the body-heating sun, and made ready for the hunt. Its squat arrow-head hid folding fangs, ready primed with searing yellow sting, enough to stop a rabbit dead. The only movement came from its deeply forked black tongue, as it licked the scent of prey from off the mountain air. Along its stubby length, a dark zigzag announced its viperous identity. Meanwhile, a buzzard circled overhead. The snake, a silver mutant, not the usual bracken brown, melded in so well with its grey bog habitat. And on the other side of the rock, a young boy sat near, unaware, as he listened for the noise that brought him to the heather hummock by the rock. Soon it came, a distant hum that rent the sky, increasing in intensity as vibrations shook the dry, cracked earth. The adder couldn't hear the deafening drone, but felt the thrumming sound. Slowly it lifted its brutal head, swaying side to side as its tongue tasted air. Coiled tightly now, it sensed the smell of prey, but still its coral black eyes could not find the target hidden by a tussock hump. The boy looked up and saw the aeroplane. Flying Fortress, 4 engines, reciting to himself. B-17, crew of 10, 9-bomb capacity. Behind the bomber came 7 more, but that was all. 4 missing, thought the boy. His sadness grew as the planes flew on, and then he saw a fluttering sheen of silver as tiny strips of radar-fooling screen cascaded down to him. One fell upon the adder's rock, and the boy reached out in search of it. His cry of pain was drowned by the sound of the last returning plane. And as the striking adder crawled away, the circling buzzard swooped on the spent fat snake and soared aloft with its poisoner prey. The boy, trying not to cry, staggered down the hill, clutching his swelling hand, which still held the silver from the sky. Cave paintings. In vans and trucks marked chocolate, the old masters came in convoy, Wales their destination from galleries of blitz-hit London town. Churchill's orders said they must be safely stored in caverns deep beneath a mountain, away from Hitler's undiscerning bombs. Slate mines of Blina became their hiding place. Blake's Mad King of Babylonia, alongside Van Dyck's Charles I, on horseback underground. Now they're all back home again, hanging in the light of the National and the Tate, dusted down and shining until the next time round. Goodbye. And so I fawn from your tight-rationed love, from your abacus count of kisses. And so I see you, seeing me, hesitate, back off like a snake that declines to strike for conquest's sake and crawls into the place it makes its own. And so I stand, desolate, like a punch without a Judy on a rain-lashed beach at Llandudno. First memory. He said he was my father, the man in the khaki coat, and let me pull the trigger of his gun. A Lee Enfield 303, I know that now, used to kill the enemy far across the sea, while I was home with Mum. I called him Daddy, and I remember that he cried, silently, as snow fell on his head. Jones the Coal. Rat-a-tat-tat came his knock on the door, and with it the gift of a song. Trumpeter, what are you sounding now? And we knew it was Jones the Coal, for his baritone voice always came with the sack of shiny jet lumps of fuel. Jones, our black Santa, he brought welcoming heat to the cold of our hilltop home. Yellow. Peering through bog myrtle beside the rocky river's edge, I see a flash of yellow, a wagtail whisking water for insect sustenance. Its sunshine colour warms the mind to spring, and the jubilance of celandine and gorse and nodding daffodil. Tales from Ireland. Cormorant boy. No words he ever heard or spoke, the beaky, gangly boy, taunted for his hearing loss. He spends the days away from bruising human company, finding kinship with the kinder ways of nature. In silent, solitary walks, he senses all about him, and sees and feels what noisy people miss. One day, he happens on a cave behind a waterfall, and wonders at the shimmering gauze of mist that shuts him from the world he left. Ahead of him he scrapes his way through tunnels in the gleaming rock, until a light before reveals a shelf above the sea. Now he sits there staring at the sun, a darkened silhouette among cormorants who bring fish and leave them at his feet. For centuries, they say, he's kept a vigil from the cliff. Búcail Cailleach Dubh, they call the rock. I'll take you there, if you dare to brave the waterfall like that lonely cormorant boy. And if you listen, you can hear the speaking waves as they well against the cliff. Búcail Cailleach Dubh, Búcail Cailleach Dubh. Faith Train. The woman made the sign of a cross as the train sped past the trees, and I wondered why, until the curving change of scene revealed a distant church, invisible till then. She'd passed that way before, and doubly steadfast in her faith, had known the place of prayer would still be there. Buried pleasure. Places mean a lot to us, and no more so than when entrancement of a moment can be shared with someone else. The spraints I leave to mark the spot for future co-joined interest are buried wines of tasteful vintage quality. Look, beneath the moss and ferns of Killincooley, in dappled shade, there lies a Madoc, seasoned Bordeaux lodged in cleft of rock. Or join me at Tecumseh Lake to drink my muscadet, and watch Arctic terns dip and flake the surface in display. Carrickburn's a charming spot, so what about a hidden hock before you clamber up the hill? Asti spumanti for airy Inistigues, and for Tintern Abbey a Chablis, or was it Montrachet? I forget, I lost the map where X marked the burial site. Crossfanogue and Ballinaclash, Owenduff River and Corrach Moor, all have Sancerre stashed down there, a fruitfulness to suit their moods of peace. Rioja at sandy Raven Point, and Alsace Riesling in Fettered-on-Sea, no ordinary plonk for Greg Manor's Siller Rock, my favourite flurries laid down there. And here, in wooded Eden Vale, a white Macon perfectly suits the trickle-down-dickle-down streel of the sow. So if you see me prowling with my trowel, and hear the clink of drink, you'll know I'm on another vintage spree. Do join me then before discerning worms can penetrate the cork. But one thing sure I know, you cannot bury bottles in a panoramic sky, like the rosé-rumpled duvet swaddling sleepy Enniscorthy. Instead, you fix the gaze and paint the scene upon your mind for later telling over wine or beer in some hostelry of love. Autumn days. From sleep you rise to sound of distant guns, and will the birds to fly too high for scattered lead to shake them from the sky. You see the rooks, black leaves deployed among the trees, waiting on the wind that fans the buds of halcyon, and feel the gentle touch of broken cobweb drifting on the breeze, towing hitchhike spiders with trapeze ease. Now, on the meniscus of your mind you hear the pat of leaf and cobnut fall, and glimpse on lady's mantle dewdrops held in diamond thrall. You listen to a robin's sweet, more tuneful song of equinox, and watch a charm of finches, golf-sock gold and red and green, as they cluster round the teasel scocks. And yet still you yearn for your time to sing, for the tom-tit twitter of an early spring, the tartar taste of wake-up time. In Hawkeye's footsteps. Astride my cottage roof, fixing slates, I see him pass, pebble glasses glinting in the sun, towel tucked underneath his arm. Hawkeye is off to the little sea-trout river Finn. I know he will be heading down the Balloch to Farley's Hole, my favourite casting spot, and I know what he is up to because at times like these he never wears his wig. Red it is, bought years ago from some travelling hairpiece salesman who'd caught other balding villagers of vulnerable vanity. Hawkeye's jaunty wig, much darned with claret whipping thread, was always left at home on these occasions. Arriving at the bank, he'd unravel the towel and take out a net. Wading in, he'd rope it to a sally branch in a tunnel of overhanging trees. It would be high tide now, and he'd be back in the morning to shake out his catch. I know, because once I'd followed him. What he didn't know was that I would release the netted fish before he returned. Sometimes I'd leave him a couple, just to allay his suspicions. That was 12 years ago. Now he's gone, He went out suddenly the poacher's way, lamping rabbits in the field above. Now it is I who have the net, and use it to protect my currant bushes from the greed of birds. Eclipse over Eden Vale. At the 11th minute of the 11th hour, on the 11th day, a muzzy sun peeped from between the clouds, and was momentarily bruised by the shadow of the moon. It cast an eerie twilight over sleepy Eden Vale, such rare crepuscularity, all creature breath baited by this moony sun. A lone female kestrel hawk, motionless on the long-dead apple tree, made an audience of two as we waited for the healing of the light. The racing moon, reason for this daunting darkness, sped through its arc, and life sprang back like a wind-bent birch. Cascading brightness bathed us now, and once again the hushed birds began to stir. August the 11th, 1999. Lake of the Beast, or Loch na Beist. The puddle I found garnered in a ridgy rock became for me in boyhood fantasy my Loch na Beist, except that she, a hairy Molly, lay stranded on an island waiting for the sun to dry her way to Heather home. Stepping stones placed close failed to wake that slothful ball, and when eventually I prodded with a twig, she rolled right in and drowned. So now the beast was in the boy, urging him, destroy, destroy, maggots which he loved to pull and break and mutilate, and conies snared, and plump-voiced pigeons blasted from the trees, all led, decades on, to loves betrayed by restless eye. Parquet, Emer, Carmel, Kate, Sinead. Beastly Moll, did you really have to die? Watchers. Mizzen tail held high, the distant watcher sidestepped on the branch, prating all the while, drawing other magpies to its grandstand view. Soon there were two, but not for joy with what they had in mind. Sorrow beckoned to the object of their Gorgon gaze. For on the broken bridge below, another bird of black and white flitted through the morning mist, bearing shags of moss to chosen nesting site. The shapely little dipper, that curtsied constantly, would never live to see the hatching of her eggs. Sagaciating. In the shadows of the bar sat two hunched men, nodding in complicity. Times were better then than now, nodding in complicity. Self-help yesterday meant helping other selves, nodding in complicity. Hardship shared meant hardship halved, nodding in complicity. There they sat, becapped, knitting proverbs, sagaciating over white-bearded beer. Road to nowhere. Canvassing is not an easy thing to do, particularly when the candidate is you, or so I found when husting on the road to nowhere. People before party was my independent stance, a slogan true to individuality, as I tramped the streets and drove and cycled round 11 counties with my 30s map, to places changed in name and roads that took another route. Faced with posters staring down at me in colours of adversity, red and blue and green and gold, left me feeling less than bold. One in particular, a presidential-looking ma'am, gave me jiff at nights, intruding as she did into my dreams and stealing all the votes. From head of hook to rusting dignity of posh green ore, I traipsed about and did the soapbox bit in nearly every town, bar Wexford, where I couldn't face the bull-ring beasting from comrades who'd no brief for me. But in Moat, epicentre of this great nation free, I found true friends who believed without plomorsing me. One man, ironically, who promised me his number one, was sitting in the sun, enthralled by Conrad's heart of darkness. "The horror, the horror!" I cried in jest. But he said he hadn't reached that bit yet, so I must have spoiled it all for him. When, emboldened, I headed up the big wide street, I felt like the Pied Piper, with my knot of followers in tow. Thank you, Moat, even though your promises did not bear fruit. In Greenore, my most northern port of all, I threw pebbles in the sea, calling out the names of each county and willing them to root for me. Alas, I wasn't voted in, but fun it was. I enjoyed the call and learned how good all people are, sharing taxing times that we now face. So my road to nowhere did lead me somewhere after all. Dippers of Kilmuckridge. The preacher man came in his square Austin 10 and parked by Kilmuckridge Pond. His words were so right, and his eyes sparkled bright with certain belief as he spoke of beyond. People listened and stayed, not so the poor priest. He passed them all by, his sightline set high. When the preacher man offered them 5 bob a dip, a queue quickly formed of God-fearing men. Into the pond they each took their turn in the wake of St. John. Then off to the bar, with the preacher man gone. For the Rackard. In Simon's bar they picked on the bow-tie man, and the hard ribbing began. But I didn't know that it was all show, and sides were drawn in josh of me, the blow-in boy, who just couldn't see the joke. Bow-tie man gave out too with fierce blue eye, of one who'd hurled against the dairy door and helped his county into history. Years on I got to know that bow-tie man, and he became a friend, I'm proud to say. His name was Billy Rackard. Now he's gone from Wexford, but not forgot, as in the field his fearless brothers kept a place for him. I never told him, though, that his clip-on tie, so proudly worn on that occasion, was at a dangle like a loppy grin. Death in the Forest. It was cold, and spring was late, the oak and the ash vying to break out a bud, so setting the seal on a summer of sunshine or rain. A sudden gust of wind met with unexpected resistance, as leaves from another season scurried along the ground, building a dam against the dark outline which barred their skittering progress. Soon the dam became the crest of a breaking wave, and the trapped leaves detached themselves, continuing up and over the still form that once stepped upon them. Oaken Heart. Better you uprooted me than used my branch to cease to be. Counting sheep. Through the skylight I see sheep staring down at me when I awake. Really, it's no joke, for my cottage hangs upon a slope. Springtime's best, when acrobatic lambs flounce around the roof, and daffodils stand in for the yellow of the morning sun. Words on a Curracloe sky. A misty rain was blowing off the water, and a dying sun had begun to paint a rainbow across the sky, just the merest hint of one, with its left foot set gently down among the distant houses of pretty Ballinesca. Looking out to sea, I glimpsed the other end of the spectrum's arch, and then, at the flick of a switch, the whole curve lit the leaden sky with its 7 glorious hues, linking that little village to a magic mark on the sea's horizon. But that was only part of the spectacle. To the west, sandwiched between silver stratus and the dark marum-spiked profile of the dunes, layer on layer of wispy cumulus glowed oxlip yellow, turning at the stroke of a brush through burnished gold to hectic orange and cerise. It was then that a curlew passed across the glowing canvas, its down-curved bill and feathers disco-tinted by the bloody sky. Coolie, 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 its wistful bubbling cry, cooing in the night. But first came climactic pastel pinks and mauves.